Man, why is it that when you go on Twitter, everyone tries to act as dramatically as humanly possible? It's like a film's actors guild. Everyone tries to be an actor. Everyone tries to pretend that the situation is far more dramatic than it actually is, regardless of what you're talking about. They even use the word literally when it's not literal. Every single time. My favorite is like, is this the hill you wanna die on? I mean, you're talking with a guy about comic books and you're telling him, look, I don't like this comic book because. And he's like, yikes! Is this the hill you wanna die on? It's like, what are you talking about, man? We're not going to war. I'm just telling you, I'm not going to give my money to a corporation. I don't enjoy their product. But you know what's the word that really annoys me? Like the type of word that if you utter, I already know the type of person you are. You're a drama llama. That's what you are. An absolute drama llama. And that's the word problematic. Okay, now there are cases where you should use the word problematic because it accurately describes the situation. However, none of those cases are ever going to transpire when you're on the Twitter. Like, here's an example of something that is actually problematic. Let's say you're working at Chernobyl reactor in Ukraine next to Anthony Dyatlov, and there is thick black smoke coming from the reactor, but all the dials are showing that it is normal. That would be problematic. Let's say you're in a flooded basement and there is an electric cable which is going into the water and you have to leave the basement, but you don't know if the electricity is turned on or off. That would be problematic. Let's say you're in North Korea and the previous dictator has passed away and your neighbor is spreading rumors that you weren't crying hard enough. Yeah, that would be problematic. Problematic would be if you hear the baby crying during the middle of the night and you realize that you're home alone and you never had sex in your life. Problematic is when you walk in the woods alone and you notice a UFO landing. Will you be the first person in human history to make first contact? Or will you be the first casualty in the following alien invasion? You could make life problematic for your married friend if you manage to take some of the hair from your girlfriend that he doesn't know about, and then when you visit your friend's house, you excuse yourself to go in the bathroom, but you take your girl's hair and you sprinkle it all over the mattress and the pillow where his wife likes to sleep on. Alternatively, you can just get a lipstick and pucker up your lips while you're at the bathroom and see if you can find one of his shirts that are supposed to go into the washing and then kiss the collar of your friend's shirt. When his wife will find out, that will definitely be problematic for him. Problematic would be if you finally meet your soulmate, a girl that is able to melt your heart with her smile. And after a successful date, you're walking on the street with her, and a guy that has the body of Mike Tyson smacks her ass and then looks at you to see what you're going to do. The following decision is definitely going to be considered problematic. Problematic would be if you wake up as the clock strikes 4 a.m. and there is a mysterious person with a bunny mask sitting next to your bed. And they start to stab you, and it's very painful as you feel the life edging away from you. And then you wake up from this nasty nightmare, and as you look at the clock, you realize that it's 3:59 a.m., and the door handle to your room is starting to spin. Problematic would be when the woman wakes up because the phone rings in the middle of the night, and she quickly darts to it not to wake up the husband sleeping next to her. And as she reads the text message, she realizes it's her husband saying that he went out to get a little bit of fresh air and he wants to buy her some cigarettes because we ran out. And then the woman turns next to the person that's sleeping next to her. Okay, that would be problematic. The fact that Billy doesn't like Star Wars despite being on Twitter for the last 4 years is not problematic. Problematic would be like feeling the warm embrace of your wife in the middle of the night. And as you wake up, you start to cry because you realize it's been exactly 5 years since she has been lost at sea. And next to you are the clothes that she used to wear, which are soaking wet and they smell of seaweed. I mean, problematic is when you look at the pictures of your phone and then you find a picture of yourself sleeping even though you live alone. Problematic is when you go home after a very hard day at work and you live alone, and as you reach for the light switch, you realize that another hand is already there. Problematic is when your son can't stop crying or screaming during the middle of the night, and you decide to visit his grave in order to beg him to stop, but it doesn't help. Problematic would be when you can't sleep during the middle of the night, so you turn to the side of the bed that has the view to the window, and you notice a grinning face staring at you from the darkness. And then you realize that you live on the 12th floor. So let's do a test just to see if you guys have been following me up till now. Would you consider it problematic if your television turned on despite the fact that you keep turning it off? And if you answered yes, then clearly you still don't understand what problematic is. Like, problematic would be if when it turns on, it shows the picture of you sitting in your living room. That would be problematic. And because you couldn't answer it, I have to give you more examples now. Like, problematic would be having the same dream over and over and over that a man is trying to take your life away. And you think it's stupid until one day at a blind date, you see that man at the table behind. Problematic would be if you realize you can't hear, speak, or breathe, and there's darkness all around. And at that point, you realize that it's too late to ask your family to have you cremated rather than buried. Problematic would be when you live in an apartment building, so you go to the basement because you have some business there, and in the basement it's very dark, and you can hear someone there with you. So you become a little bit nervous and you want to leave. And you rush towards the elevator, and you manage to press the button and the elevator starts going up. But when the door opens, you're back to the basement. And you can hear the person that was there coming closer and closer. So as you press the door again, the elevator goes back up, and when it opens, it goes back to the basement. Now, deciding whether to hit the button another time or just go to the stairs is a very problematic decision, considering that these sounds are getting even closer than usual. Problematic is when YouTube shuts down your channel, which is your livelihood, and they say you violated their community guidelines, but they don't really tell you which community guideline you violated. And you know you're only allowed to make one appeal, and if you don't make the appeal properly, then it gets rejected and you can never contact them ever again. Problematic would be if you're a stand-up comedian who is below mediocre, but you really need to start making money in order to feed your family. And one day as you're on the stage, you make a joke at the expense of a very good friend of yours, which in your opinion isn't very funny, but the entire stage just bursts in laughter and they're incredibly amused by the joke you're making. And after you finish your performance, you realize that the friend you made the joke at the expense of doesn't exist anymore and no one remembers him. And you're a little bit bewildered by that, and the next day you make a joke at the expense of another friend, and the same thing happens. More people join your show and it becomes very popular, but at the end of it, the other friend you made a joke at the expense of also disappears. Deciding whether or not to keep your rising popularity or just stop making jokes at the expense of your friends and risking your family to starve is problematic. Problematic would be if you wake up after a near-death experience and you're at the hospital and the doctor just drops his scalpel in shock. So you grin at the doctor and you say, "Hey, I'm not dead yet," and the doctor goes like, I just finished performing the autopsy. Oh yeah, and then there's that classic when you take your son and you tuck him into bed and your son is scared and asks you to check for monsters under the bed. So hilariously, you decide to amuse him, and as you look under the bed, you see your son being very scared and whispers, "Daddy, Daddy, there's a monster in my room." Now, the problematic part, I guess, would be deciding whether you can stay there a little bit longer or should you just raise your head and look at what's on the bed. Problematic is when someone reads you a love poem like roses are red, violets are blue, omae wa mo shindeiru.